Hello, this is Professor Campbell, and I'm going to go over the um, different ways that we calculate the inventory based on the cost flow. So, first of all, there are basically two different ways a problem can present itself. So, the problem can state the inventory and its purchases, and it have it identified and extended for you, and the number of sales in quantity and things like that. It could also have some other distracting information like what the sales were sold at, the price of the sales. That's a common distractor. You don't need to know what they sold the inventory at. You just need to know the number of units that were sold. Sometimes they'll give you the total sales of that were available and tell you what the price was per unit, and then you have to calculate the unit. So either way, this is the information that you need, and sometimes it's arranged this way. Other times I see a lot of problems using a chronological age. So this is just like a general ledger transaction type of a thing. So it's in date order, and it has how things happened in date order: buys and sells, purchases and sales. And we have to derive the information out of this. So a little bit more pencil work to find out what the total cost of inventory was, and then add up the inventory units that you began with plus purchases, and then the inventory units sold, add those up. So let's first begin with an inventory using this particular framework of what we're working at. So for periodic average cost, okay, so I'm going to divide it between periodic and perpetual because there are differences in the average cost and in LIFO between periodic and perpetual. Don't just look at this, write these things down. Use your hands to write these down. Periodic average cost. There are three questions that will be asked. Could be a multiple choice question that asks, what's the ending inventory quantity? Could ask, what's the ending inventory cost? It could ask, what is the cost of goods sold? So these are the three variables that the questions can ask, and this is the procedure to get all of those answers, some of which you have to get the others for. Okay, periodic average cost. Now let's take a look at perpetual average cost. In perpetual average cost, we're going to set up a framework with date, add purchases, minus cost of goods sold. I'm going to look at quant and cost. So 1-1, we began with inventory of 4,000 units at $5.50. So I had 4,000 units, and I extend this, and I have 22,000 in inventory to begin with. On 110, I sold 2,000. And I sold those at $5.50. I'm going to put brackets around here to indicate that I sold something. Okay, so I have 2,000 left in inventory, and they are at 11,000. Next date, 117. I add 1,000 shares at $6.50. Sorry about that. I needed to skip a line there. January 17th was $6. 1,000 at $6 equals 6,000. Okay. Now that I've added something here, my weighted average is going to change. And my weighted average is now total cost of 17 divided by 3,000. So it's going to be equal to $5.667. Okay. So I have to do a math function on that line. On this line, it's still the same. It's still $5.50. Okay. Skip a line. The next one is 322. I added 3,000 shares at $7. I added 3,000 shares, giving me 6,000 total. And 7 times 3,000 is 21,000. Okay, divide that. And my new average, my running weighted average goes up. My prices are going up, my weighted average goes up as well. My next transaction is 415. 415. I sold 1,500, sorry. I sold 1,500. And I sold them at this price, 6.333. Okay. 1,500 units times 9,500. So we're going to round that up. Yes, feel free to round things up when you get some of these problems. Follow the instructions. They will usually tell you where you can round things. So now I'm at, and if I'm still at 6,333. My next transaction on 10/15, I bought 3,000 more shares at 750 plus 3,000. Okay, if 51,000 is my total cost, my total units, 7,500. I divide that and I got an average of 680. Then my last transaction is November 20th, and I sold 3,000. Looks like I got an ending inventory of 4,500. And when I multiply this out times, this is going to be sold at 680. Multiply that out, and I have 20,400 and an ending inventory of 36,600. Okay, my units, my quantity. Do my units check out? Yes. Okay. My ending inventory cost and perpetual average inventory cost of goods sold equals total cost minus the ending inventory cost. Total cost. Okay. Periodic versus perpetual. Same quantity. Ending inventory costs 29,250 on the periodic average cost, and on the perpetual, it's 36,600. Cost of goods sold under the average cost 42,250, under perpetual 34,900. A bit of difference there. Okay. Using these numbers here. Okay, FIFO. They're both the same. So the first question is, what is ending inventory quant? It's equal to total units minus sales units, total units, okay? Number two, to do the FIFO, we apply to the last purchases from chronological order. Okay, so I'm using the framework date, quant, cost, and total. So I go backwards on my dates, and I'm looking for, because first in, first out means that first in, first out, these were sold. So we're costing our inventory, it's what's left. So we go down to the bottom of the list to find out what's left. The 1015 layer is left. We're looking for 4,500, we get 3,000 out of that layer. And those costs were $7.50 for a total of 22,500. Then I go up to the next layer, 322, and I only need 1,500 to get me up to 4,500. Okay, and that layer is at $7. I cost that out, multiply it, and then here I have ending inventory at cost, number 2. Okay, that's my answer. And number 3, cost of goods sold. Under periodic, perpetual, FIFO, the cost of goods sold is going to be total cost minus ending inventory cost. That's this number up here. So my total cost was 71,500. Subtract 33,000. And I'm going to have 38,500 for cost of goods sold. Same amounts for both under FIFO. Makes it really easy. So this is the fast method. Okay, if you get something that asks on the FIFO, that's the fast method. Let's do periodic LIFO. Okay, the ending inventory equals total units minus sold units, total units minus sold units, number 2. For LIFO, we apply to first layers. Instead of the last, we're applying it to the first layers in chrono order. So I'm going to say I'm looking for my 4,500 from the first layers. So I'm going to look at 1, beginning, and I'm going to get 4,000 units out of that layer at $5.50, and that equals 22,000. I could have put caps on these columns as well, right? I could have put date, quant, cost total. Okay. Now the next layer, 117, is 1,000, but I only need 500 because I got 4,000 out of the first layer. So I only need 500. And that brings me up to 4,500. And that price is $6. And that is going to be $3,000. We can add this up now. 25,000 ending inventory cost. Cost of goods sold is equal to total cost minus ending inventory cost. That's this number right here. Total cost. Subtracting this, I get 46,500. Periodic LIFO using these numbers. Okay. LIFO, last in, first out. So these were the last ones in, first ones to be sold, last ones in, first ones to be sold. And then what we had left was as we work our way up this chronological order. Perpetual. Okay. I think one can guess that perpetual is going to be different than LIFO. So let's head up the columns with a date, purchases, okay. So the date we began with was 1/1, and I had a beginning of 4,000 at $5.50. So that was 4,000, 22,000 cost. And on 1/10, I sold 2,000 at $5.50 because I have 2,000 units left. I use brackets to indicate that I sold. Okay, my next layer is 117, and I added 1,000 at $6. So I add 1,000 here. I have 3,000 units now. And $322. I add 3,000 units at $7. Add 3,000. I now have 6,000 units. $415. I sold 1,500, and I sold them at the last price, $7. See how that worked? Sell it at the last price. Minus 1,500 equals 4,500. Don't jump to conclusions. We're not done yet. 38,000 minus 10,500 equals 27,500. Next transaction was 1015, and I added 3,000 at $7.50. I added 3,000, $7.50. That's 22,500. Tally these things up. 50,000. 50,000. Then on November 20th, I sold 3,000. And I sold them at the last price that I bought them at, $7.50. So minus 3,000, and I'm back to 4,500 units. And I subtract 22,500, and I end up with 27,500. Cost, quantity. So number one, ending inventory, a check, so total units, minus sold, 11,000 minus, okay, it agrees. 2, the ending inventory cost equals 27,500. These are the answers like to a multiple choice question or a simulated problem. The cost of goods sold is equal to total cost minus ending inventory cost. Okay, minus 27,500. Total cost was 71,500. Okay, if you noticed, we were working on units. So these were all units that we worked on. So this is the unit LIFO. Later on, we'll see how we can make that layers in complicated and larger businesses. We can use pools and use dollar values on those pools, but this is examples using unit LIFO. Okay, so our three answers at the end of the day: ending inventory cost, and cost of goods sold. So those are the three possible answers when they ask you either a multiple choice question or an exercise, a simulation using perpetual LIFO unit cost. Okay, that's when we have our inventory all nicely arranged for us. All right, thank you very much. This has been Professor Campbell.